Thank you all so much for joining us today. My name is Mi, and welcome to our first ever Ace Con. This is an event celebrating asexuality, what it means to be, our experiences, stories, and how we can lift each other up. During this con, we will be sharing deeply personal topics. What is true for us may not be true for you. We want to keep this space safe, and we will be providing links to resources that you can utilize. We are not therapists or psychologists. We are not licensed, but we do want to encourage you to listen and utilize those resources that we will be providing today. Thank you so much to all of our producers, moderators, and panelists for helping to put this together. And let's meet everyone else. Zachary, why don't we start with you?
Hello, I am Zachary Naldrek. He, him. I am Zach Rules on various social media sites, mostly Twitter, except for TikTok because Zachary's got to it first. So I'm Zach Rules Dice there.
Oh, I totally forgot my. Oh, go on. What flavor of Ace do you fall under?
Asexual, and if I am saying that wrong, it's because I learned the word by reading it. I'm sorry.
Like all of us, pretty much. I totally forgot about my intro. I'm me. I use they, them pronouns. I identify as demi sexual, bunch of other things, but you know, asexuality today. I use the handle Miguel just about everywhere. I'm on Twitch, I'm on Twitter, I have Instagram, but I don't really use it anymore, but you can still find me there. YouTube, maybe in the future. And I think that's it for me. Elijah.
Hi, my name is Elijah. They, he. I go by the Sun name set on Twitter. That's where I am mostly. And I typically just go with asexual. I feel like it's a pretty good cover of how I usually feel.
Cool. Jared.
Hi there, I'm Jared. I'm also on Twitter as IrishWolf13, or on Discord, IrishWolf13. I use he, him pronouns, and I generally identify or use just asexual, but I'm still figuring that out. Maybe a little demi here and there. Who knows?
Yeah, for sure. Liz.
My name is Liz. I use she, her pronouns. I'm usually on Twitter as Liz Fabtastic. And I'm one of those rare unicorns of the asexual community in that I am a sex repulsed asexual. So
I want to talk about that more, definitely, because
we will.
That's a whole.
That's a whole.
That's a whole thing. It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
I don't like why we're here today.
I kept my unicorn horn on standby for.
All right, and last but not least, Lily.
Hello, I am Lily. I'm Elise on Life on Twitter, and that's where I had really been. But since it's dying, I joined Spoutable under the same name. You can find me in different places. I'm LaScribe on Twitch and Discord, and I'm also Lily PHL over on IG, although that is just all like my creative stuff. I crochet, I make beaded earrings, like that kind of image-based stuff is what I do over on IG. And
sorry, go on.
No, go. And I am also agosexual ace. I usually the whole like mouthful that I use is agosexual, gray ace, pan demi romantic.
Yep. Sometimes I feel like as we explore ourselves, we find that it's looking more and more like an ingredient list.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, I use Instagram. It's like my cosplay stuff and like stuff like
Yeah.
It's just there.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we have a couple of terms that have already come up that a lot of people might not know. I mean, agosexual is new for
That's
me,
new to
so
me
I'd
too.
love to learn what that is. So yeah, I think maybe we should start with what is asexuality. And I thought it'd be interesting to compare that to what the opposite of that is, which is allosexuality. That's how, and at least how I see it is that people who do experience sexual attraction, or I think like a good percentage of people who experience sexual attraction, whereas asexual is little to none, or specific circumstances, or like it's just like not all the time. So what about everyone else's experiences with how they define asexuality?
Well, I think I define asexuality also as like an emotional thing. Allosexuals are, to me, are people who um actually want to engage in sexual contact and different things that society deems as being sexual. Whereas asexuals may um also engage in those things, but don't necessarily feel a connection or an emotional response to them.
I would agree with Lily too. I would also extend that it's also something of asexuality to me is not really having a desire to seek it out. Like it might be something you partake in, but sometimes I've explained it to people as like I don't necessarily like working out, but that might be something that I do from time to time for various reasons. But it's not the same as for most people who I've talked to who have who have an intrinsic drive. I should say most allosexual people who have a intrinsic drive to seek it out, or it's just second nature.
It's like for, I guess what I'm hearing is like asexuality, it means that like that activity is not a priority.
Yeah.
And then for me, it's not on the list, not an option.
Okay.
So
yeah, for
like,
sure. I get it. It's not pretty. It's like unhygienic and like
There's
it really
like there's a
is.
lot of fluids and
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just like why
There's stuff
why
so many-
would you want
I just washed my seats yesterday. I don't want to have to do it again.
too many
Yeah.
textures.
Listen,
Like-
there's a new episode of The Last of Us out. Like there are
Yeah.
other things we could be doing right now.
I went to an omakase restaurant like last weekend. I had dinner and was like, this is better than most sexual experiences I've had.
Yeah.
Hands down, this is better. I'm willing to put down $150 for this.
Yeah.
I mean, I got crumble
See-
cookies in the fridge. Like I hear it.
And I just said, you go to a nice restaurant, you have a good dinner, and you can say it's better than sex. And some of us, for us, it's like I made ramen, and that was better than the last time I had sex. So yeah, it's a varying thing for everybody. It's there is the umbrella where people are like not having sexual attraction for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
And there are going to be little pockets or people who have experienced that in different ways. And that's where we start coming into kind of the micro terms for the
Yeah.
other
I also
categories.
want to like put down like a kind of point that yes, we do say that some activities are better, but it's not because we've had bad sex. Like
Right.
I've had good experiences, but it's just like, I want to do other things too. Like I don't want to just bang all the time,
Yeah.
Like I want to spend time with them, like anyways.
And I mean, I think it's important to note that just like the gender spectrum, the sexuality spectrum, asexuality is fluid. Your desires change day to day.
Yes.
So your your sort of position on that asexuality spectrum could change partner to partner. It could
Absolutely.
change year to year. I for a very long time identified as demisexual, and then had my first experience and was just like, I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure.
So
So I want to move on then to some other definitions. So now I want to compare it because a lot of people I think kind of clump it in the same bubble when it's not aromantic and asexuality, because there are people who are aromantic, but that does not mean, certain things or the other, because there are like aromantic people who like experience sexual attraction, they just don't want the romance. So yeah, I feel like I just want to be clear here, because I am demi. I think I haven't figured that out yet. I think I'm pretty sure. I think maybe some. I don't know. So I want to hear like what other people think about, maybe how do we separate the two and what does that feel like?
I mean, I think if you consider, not necessarily comparing it to allosexuality, but in the non-asexual world, I guess, people go out and have one night stands, and then people go out and have relationships, and the two are not connected in the same way that, my desire for romance has nothing to do with my desire for a physical relationship. And we are seeing more and more. I mean, I just realized with this convention this weekend that, the difference between identifying your sexuality and your romantic feelings, and then what kind of people you're attracted to. Like, I never even considered, like, okay, I'm asexual, sort of demi-romantic, but like, am I heterosexual? Am I pansexual? There's once upon a time I thought it was one term, like that's my sexuality,
Yeah.
that's who defines me. And I think we're realizing more and more that it is so nuanced that
Ingredient lists.
yes, again, the ingredient, yeah.
And then you just take up more and more space in your like profiles, and you're just like, I don't have enough characters for anything else.
I know.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah,
that does make sorry, go on.
no,
I'm talking
no,
too
you can
much.
go ahead, Kat. Sorry.
No, I'm talking way too much.
You're fine. I kind of wanted to add on that too, because I know for me, a really long time, I thought I was aromantic because, especially when you're growing up, there's not really a conversation of like the difference between sex and romance. So for me, I was like, I don't want to, I don't want to do anything with anybody. So maybe maybe I don't feel like romantic anything towards anybody. But over time, I find that I do really like people. I much rather like we go on a movie date, let's go to the museum, let's do like romantic things. Like I like spending time with you. That's how I like show people like I really like you. I'd much rather be doing this than anything sexual. And then in recent years, I've like also started exploring kink a little bit more. And for me, like I really like the sections that aren't like traditionally like sexual. Like I'd much rather be there. I mean, there's like a whole list of things that aren't like, you can do that isn't like immediately like we're just, bumping our parts together.
For
So
sure. I like
yeah.
No fluids.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
fluids.
yeah,
No
too
fluids,
much.
no
It's like
Too
fluids.
much.
it's like I can keep my clothes on for this. This is great.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm introverted to begin with, so it's hard to say if I am a romantic as well, or if it's just I just would rather, sit at home and read a book than go out to a bar and try to meet people or something like that. Um, it's easier for me to say I'm ace than and just say ace arrow because I like the colors better. And you know, I'm still kind of figuring that out, and this is something that it has to be figured out because someone can't just tell you, you know, this is um, who you are, or it's not that clear cut.
Right. Yeah, so like to build off of what Elijah said, he mentioned how it was kind of hard to tell the difference between sex and romance because so many of those things are really tied up into each other. And so I would call myself touch averse, and also really, really skin hungry, but I have built up this thing where I don't even like what would be considered casual romantic touches, because to me it feels like in the other person's head there's always this calculator going with how many of these lead up to sex. So then I'm like, well, if I don't allow these things, then the calculator always stays at 0. So like even like putting your arm around somebody or rubbing someone's back or their arm, kissing, like I don't really like to engage in those things with other people because I don't want them to think that is going somewhere. So that's why I feel like I have sort of added the demi row name to my definition of my ace identity.
And it's so tough to like hear that we have to build these kinds of like walls to protect ourselves, because
Mhm.
like I definitely like understand that too. Like um the sheer number of times when you're just like having fun with each other and then they're like, okay, we're going to start, and I'm like, why? I
Yeah.
don't want to do that. Can we
Yeah,
keep things
exactly. Like
on?
this is
Like
this is
this is
good. This is
fun
enough.
now.
I like this.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah. And if we
I don't want
stop
to do any
now,
more.
I'm good
Yeah.
too.
Yeah,
Yes.
So
it's such a mood killer. Like you just instantly, it's like, okay.
yeah. And then like the pressure, then it's also kind of gross feeling too, because then you have the pressure of like, oh, like I started something with another person. Now do I have to finish them?
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
and then you feel guilty and like kind of gross about it. It's like whole thing.
Yeah.
But also I wanted to touch upon what Elijah said earlier about like kink and asexuality.
Mhm.
That's a whole thing. Like
Yeah.
probably because this is going to be uploaded to YouTube later, we can't talk about it here. But it'd be great. I think another panel just to have that. I think would be
AceCon
super
after
cool.
dark.
Yeah.
Yes,
For
For sure. For sure.
Let me know.
Yeah.
Let me
'Cause there
know, because
are-
that sounds great.
Right.
Because there's a huge community in the kink community that is asexual, that are just people looking for these kind of emotional bonding moments without the act of that,
Mhm.
right? So cool. Okay, so we kind of touched upon the next things I want to touch upon was demi versus gray, which I'm actually not super clear on either. I think I identify more with demi, but I feel like I don't have enough definitions. We also have some questions from chat. We didn't forget you. We will get to it after. But yeah, what are people's definitions of the two, and why do you identify with one more than the other, I guess?
Oh well, I'm a wordsmith and a pedant, so I
We love it.
identify with stuff because it sounds good together. Like I love the way pan sounds, and it doesn't mean that I may not ever use bisexual or like identify with that, or biromantic or identify with that. I just love the way that pan demi rose sounds like really cool together.
Yeah, for sure. Is there like a more clinical definition of like gray and demi? Because I know like both of them mean an exception. Like you're ace and you don't experience sexual attraction except when.
Mhm.
But between the two, like what is, I guess, a more specific
Well, I can
difference?
tell you what the no, the Cleveland Clinic says. Because I know for me, it's sort of the same thing. Like a lot of these, like I've only really come to terms, and I hate that I have to say it that way, with my own asexuality in the past year or so. Um, so like so many of these expressions are new to me. But according to the Cleveland Clinic, the difference is that people who are gray sexual don't need an emotional bond to feel sexual attraction like demisexuals do.
Oh, okay.
So take that as you
Interesting.
will.
Yeah. Yeah,
I-
that's super
So
that
interesting.
tracks for
Okay.
me at least. Just because like as somebody who's just now considering, oh, maybe I'm demisexual, because of some very recent experiences. And like sort of piggybacking on the last conversation we had of like I'm a very romantic person. Like all of the stuff we're talking about and then some, but it stops at a certain line. And I've realized maybe 3 times in my life, both after I started identifying as asexual and before I knew what that meant and understood that about myself. I've had that. I've had that sensation, those thoughts, those urges, those impulses with maybe 3 people, and it's because I've had at that point in time a very, very, very deep emotional connection with them. At least that's what I felt in that moment. And like at one of those times was actually recently, where I was just like, oh, wow, I haven't thought about that in a long time. Why is that? Because for the last 4 years, I've been identifying as ace. I've never thought about that stuff. Why is that? And I realized it's because of that connection. And I was actually talking to somebody who I know in a casual setting who was asking me, and hopefully they get to watch this because they were curious about their own identity. But they were asking me questions about being ace, and they were sort of leaning towards the gray side of things, where like they've had that and it's not been necessarily tied to an emotional connection, but it's not frequent enough, it's not casual enough that they feel confident describing themselves as allosexual. So
Yeah.
I mean, at least for me, that's why I'm more attached to demi as a personal identifier.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense now. Okay, that totally makes definitely demi then for me. Because I think we can definitely segue right into this question. Question from chat. How did you discover that you were different? That you felt differently than how the society views sex? Well, it's because everyone around me was getting one night stands, and I was like, why? Why would you do that? And not get tested like before? You just go to a bar and you just do it? Like you didn't get tested? Like maybe I just think too much about these things. I don't
It's
know.
wild.
yeah.
It's,
Like you don't know them? You said hi. You get their name first? Like
I had family encourage me to sleep around at a certain point, and I was just like, first of all, no, I don't need to hear that from you. And second, like the moment that started setting red flags, and I'm like, yeah, everybody else seems to be into that. I'm not. I mean, I guess if you don't mind me just sort of rambling on here for a bit, like it was a bit of a slow burn for me of like realizing more and more how much of like thoughts I'd had growing up in middle school, high school, and stuff like that sort of aligned with this. Of like thinking back now in hindsight, like whenever, people would talk about celebrities they want to sleep with or marry F kill, that sort of thing, games, like I was just like, well, like my knee-jerk reaction in high school and stuff was like, well, like it depends on what they're like as a person, and like let's go to the movies or go out to like I literally couldn't conceptualize that sort of attraction to somebody. And as time went on, I was sexually active, um, and it just sort of started fading, like the impulse sort of faded, and I thought more about why it was fading. Admittedly, it's a little personal, but like I did a lot of self-blaming, because of my gender identity, because of the community that I'm in and the pressure to perform as one of those individuals. Like it was very much inward directed, there's something wrong with me. And I made
comp
more and
head
more,
is
I made more and more excuses to try and describe, oh, it's a chemical imbalance, it's this, it's a psychological thing, it's all of these excuses, and it just kept building and building and building. to a point where I mean it's a very nerdy thing, but I think we're all nerdy people here. Is that I saw some really dope pride art a couple years back of like video game and popular media characters all sporting their flags. And there were a handful that I recognized that I really loved that were ace. And I never really thought about ace much, but I was like, wait a minute, like that doesn't jive with what I've been taught, what I've been fed about what asexuality is. And so it was seeing that art and then diving into like, well, what is asexuality? And I remember sitting in the grocery store parking lot for like 2 hours just Googling and researching on my phone.
As you do.
Going, yeah, as one does, as one
Mhm,
does.
mhm.
But just going through those resources and stuff and going, well, hell, like, okay, this is actually starting to make a little bit of sense. And it took me still a while to figure it out after then, but it was legitimately like sort of a recollection. And that combined with starting to surround myself with more ace resources and like start looking up creators and stuff who were outwardly asexual, that it started to repaint my picture of what that might be, and just a very very clear realization that like, oh no, there is a word for it, there's a group of people. And then beyond that, that it's not just one thing. It's like we've been talking about this whole time, it's a big spectrum. Everybody is different within it, and just because, you know, just because I was sexually active at one time, that doesn't necessarily mean that I was not asexual then or whatever. And it's just been sort of reaffirming that ever since.
For sure. Like, I had a hard time just because, like, I love the aesthetic of people. Like when people were like, oh yeah, no, like that person who's walking across the street, yeah, I banged that. And I'm like, you don't know them. But also I like their choice of clothing. I
Mhm.
like, how they style themselves. I like their makeup. I like, it's like all these things that they chose. I'm like, I don't like body parts. I mean, there are some that look nice, but it's just like, but like I don't know them. Why would I? Why?
Yeah,
Why?
that was one of the big things that I remember reading, was that like my mind being open to like just different kinds of attraction and how they are separate exclusive things.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
started thinking of it as like everybody's got a bunch of slider bars or stat blocks, and everybody's stat blocks and slider bars ingredient lists are going to be different, and those can fluctuate, they can stay off, they can turn on, whatever. And I was like, okay, this works.
Yeah.
I know.
Sorry,
Oh,
go on.
so yeah. So I know for me, I spent so much time making excuses, like trying to come up with reasons, like why isn't I don't feel this way? In middle school and high school, my friends are getting into relationships. In college, I always told myself, well, I'm so focused on my education, or I'm so focused on my family, that's why I'm not dating. And I remember the first time texting my sister like 7 or 8 years ago saying like, I think I'm demisexual. And her initial reaction was like, you just haven't seen any healthy relationships, And all my love to her, but like, it took me a really long time. Like, I'm 37 years old and I still don't really like, I mean, maybe it's what I grew up with, but like referring to myself as a queer woman, like I'm not comfortable saying that. Because it's only been in the past year or so that I've really embraced who I am. And even then I was in a car riding to PAX Unplugged last year, talking to my good friend about, I was in a relationship with my partner and we had our first physical experience and I was totally not into it. And she was like, honey, I don't think you're demisexual. I was like, yeah, no, I think you're right. But even then, it's one of those things that's so misunderstood. And like it's hard having to explain it to other people. Like, why should I have to explain my sexuality to you every time you ask me, well, are you going to have kids? Are you going to get married? Why aren't you dating someone right now? And it's like, just let me be. Like, let me figure this out on my own and I'll get back to you. So yeah.
But it's also like I'm on the like other side of the spectrum of it, I guess, where I'm always dating. I love dating. But it's like, it's still like I don't want to get married as well. And I don't want kids. Like,
Yeah.
please take my uterus out of my body. It does nothing for me. Like, like, this is like a
Yes.
whole other thing when it comes to gender identity. But
Yeah.
my menstrual cycle gives me gender dysmorphia. My body's not supposed to do that to me. Like, that what it does? No. So just please take it out and give it to someone else who wants it. But I think that's actually becoming a thing. They can actually like take someone's
Oh,
uterine,
yeah.
like, or not, well, not probably not a transplant, but they can actually put.
I know a couple years ago there was
Yeah.
the first
Use
successful
the-
uterine transplant.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
like, super cool. Like, please take mine. But
We need,
I
need a
volunteer
registry
tribute.
for that.
but in any case, like, you know, how asexuality looks is just so different that I think it's just so hard for people to identify with, because I think so much of the time people think of asexuality as like, don't want sex ever, and like
And like I
don't
want
have
to
any
touch
sexual
on,
attraction, but also like celibate, and it's just like not, it's just not like that.
I want to touch on, because I know there was another question about how do you know your lack of sexual desire is not from a medication.
I was about to go there too.
I've been on birth control and antidepressants since I was 18, and I explored that route with my doctor, and she put me on medication that was supposed to help, like increase your sex drive, and it did nothing. And my immediate reaction was like, well, there's something wrong with my body, not that it's not there and it's never going to be there, but like the medication's not working because there's something wrong with me. And I think that unfortunately, like there's, a lot of I don't want to say shame, but it is like I felt ashamed that I couldn't produce these feelings and that I couldn't feel attracted to other people because that's what everyone else was doing. I'm not normal. I'm not like everybody else. And it's I mean, honestly, I'll say for me, like I'm a teacher. And I started a gay straight alliance at my last school. And it wasn't really until I saw all of these kids just like, 12, 14 years old. They're like, yeah, I'm ace aro. And I'm like, I wish I had the confidence that you guys do. Like I'm 37 years old and I can't even feel that confident about myself. And I don't even know where I was going with that, but but yeah, it's an experience. I'm done.
I will say there are medication that does kind of decrease or eliminate libido. SSRIs for one, which is in a lot of antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds. I've been on antidepressants for the last like 2 years, which is great. I should have been on them the whole time, but I wasn't, but I got them. And nothing has really changed. I know some birth control does also. I think I was on like the Depo-Provera, which is the injection, and that killed my sex drive. It just disappeared. But like, I think you just kind of have to feel it out, like what feels right for you. And if you're on medication and you don't feel it, then that's okay too. But if you want to, then talk to your doctor and see if you can figure something out.
Yeah, I think if we're talking about like when you first felt different, like I think I felt different than everybody else for a lot of reasons, and the sex stuff was not the only reason. But I've always had a problem, I guess I would say. I don't know if I really call it a problem, but I just don't form emotional connections to anything. Like it's not just to other people. It's like when people are watching a TV show and then it gets canceled and I'm like, oh, well, I mean, I guess. Like I don't get it. And when people, especially over like the last 5 years, there's been a lot of sort of people who were in music and other media things that for a lot of people built like a fundamental like step in their childhood who have died, and I'm like, oh, that's really sad. Like it's sad when somebody dies, right? but I don't feel this connection to like mourn and grieve about this person that I didn't really know. And even if I did like their music or like the shows that they were in or whatever like that, I've no connection whatsoever to nostalgia either. Like all these things that have started coming out that were supposedly in my childhood. I mean, it feels like there's like 20-year-olds who are like, let's live the 80s again. And I'm like, the 80s weren't that great. But but you know, like I don't have that emotional connection. So when I was growing up and the sexual connection wasn't there either, I just thought, oh, this is just, I'm just different, right? I didn't realize that there was really like, you could put things in different boxes and say, but this is for this and this is for that. So I dated a lot. Like I felt like the more you do it, then maybe you'll like it.
Practice
Right?
makes perfect, right?
Exactly. Right. So I dated a lot, and it still was never, it was just never there. But I just kept thinking, if I keep trying, something will happen. And I had undiagnosed depression and anxiety, possibly bipolar disorder, for a very long time, all throughout my teens, all throughout my 20s. And you know, the medication actually gives me some clarity, but it did not like take away something that was already there. So I just want to, you know, like for people who maybe didn't really have like a fundamental experience of burgeoning sexuality or romanticism without their antidepressants, like I knew that it wasn't the antidepressants that did this. You know, I felt like this way before.
Yeah.
So, you know, I know that it can happen, but I also know that they can be really separate entities, not feeling sexual attraction or romantic attraction or wanting to engage in those things, and also taking antidepressants or medications that say that they can reduce your libido, are two separate things.
For sure. I also like, oh, sorry, no, go on.
I was gonna say, touching on it, like recognizing that you're different. I didn't. Looking back, knowing now, I can see how I was different, and I can see how those interactions that I had at 13, I didn't realize that it was different, and in my 20s, did not realize it was different. I was 40 by the time I got around to figuring that out. Looking back, I can see the signs. It's just that wasn't ever a concern. I wasn't in a place where these types of topics came up, so it was never a conversation that was had until I got back into role playing at like 38.
Role playing is such like a great gateway for just everything.
I know.
Yes. Mhm.
Explore everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also, that made me think of something else that a lot of people that I knew growing up, especially once we hit our late 20s, early 20s, like early adulthood, that they say, oh, this cartoon character was my sexual awakening, and I'm like, they're not real. I don't understand. Like, sure, like I get crushes. So like I would, see the drawn character and be like, oh yeah, no, I like how they look. But that's it. I don't, everything else after that, I'm like, oh, okay.
I mean,
Sounds fake, but okay.
I understand what
Yeah.
people should be attracted to, and I understand beauty and conventional attraction and non-conventional attraction, but at the same time I'm just like, yeah, they're hot, but like, ooh.
Yeah.
And as I like kind of going back to what I had mentioned, is I didn't recognize I had attractions, and that's one of the things about being asexual, is that you still have the attraction, you just have no desire to act on it. You know, I knew the moment I saw Lita Ford's "Kiss Me Deadly" video that I was into women. That I was attracted to women. I just didn't want to have sex.
Mhm.
It's
Yes.
not something I was interested in, and as you know, it ranges from boring to actually boring or to actually repulsed.
Mm.
Mhm.
I think it came up. I don't remember which one, but in one of the other panels, like aces can be thirsty too.
Oh
You
yeah.
just,
Oh, some of the thirstiest people I
Yeah.
know
Oh
are
yeah.
ace.
Oh yeah.
Yes, exactly.
The thirstiest. The
Yeah.
absolute thirstiest. And
But
sometimes the
I think
kinkiest.
that's because we also recognize that there are different tiers of attraction too, right? And so like I can be aesthetically attracted to someone without having the sexual component and like be like they can dress really really well. Like, oh my God, look at how they put those colors together. How are they mixing prints? They're wearing like flowers and plaid together and are rocking it.
The amount of like friend crushes I have,
Mm.
like, oh yeah, like you can admire someone and appreciate how they look and still not feel sexual attraction to them.
Right.
Also,
I mean,
what
I've
about
also done that. I've oh sorry.
no,
I was just
go on.
gonna.
Okay. I've definitely done that thing where I'm like, oh, I'd want to bang that person, but it's really more of a theoretical thing. Like I'm so
Theoretical.
attracted to them that I will say, yeah, I'd want to bang them. But in reality, if they were standing in front of me and saying, like, you said you wanted to bang, so let's get to it, then I'd be like, oh, actually, I'm like just started making some cupcakes. Do you want to
Yeah.
like
I have a soup going on the stove.
Yeah.
you know?
dinner.
Yeah.
Oh, I just queued up this TV show that I really wanted to
Mm.
watch on Netflix. So
It's like
you know what I
actually
mean?
I'm booked up tonight with myself.
Can we just
Exactly.
cuddle?
Please.
Yeah, I mean that
Cuddling,
too.
top
Yeah,
tier.
yeah, that
Top
too.
tier.
Well, I wonder, like, so bringing that up, part of me wonders if it's sort of like, so like I'm a language teacher, it's all about code switching and the language you use. But like as an asexual person in an allosexual society, like, are we using the language understood by others so that we can be understood? Like saying that like, oh yeah, they're super hot, I totally do them. Like that's like the universal language. Like I know that that's not true and my friends know that that's not true, but it's like a sentiment that everybody understands,
Mhm.
you know?
Because it's almost
So
like the pinnacle of attraction.
yes.
Right. Right.
I'm already like pretty selective about who I'm like close to anyways and who I'm friends with anyways. So generally speaking, like if I already deem you to be close enough to be a friend, like I will straight out of the bat now, which is only something recent that I've been comfortable with, but like straight out of the bat, just be like, hey, by the way, I'm asexual. So like if I'm saying something flirty to you, it is just playing. Like I like language, I'm fun, but like
Mhm.
I need you to know
Flirting
that
is so
it's
much
not
fun.
going anywhere. It's so much fun. I
It
love it.
is.
It's a language thing too. But and especially when like they flirt back, even though like that it's just a like, oh, we're friends now.
Mhm.
We can do this now
Mhm.
with
I've
an
spent
understanding that you're gonna go do your thing and I'm gonna go do my thing. Like
that's one of the things I've spent a lot of time thinking about in kind of the language that I use. How much of that is actually, me learning to try to cope and how to try to fit in with people that, I don't have share experiences with. There's a number that comes up that people always say nice to, and I'll just roll my eyes, and that's my instinct, just like, but uh, how much of the innuendo and double entendres are things that we've learned behavior as far as, uh, you know, instead of just, actually kind of using it as a tool to fit in, and instead of actually
Mm.
thinking that. And a lot of people won't see the difference
mm,
when we make jokes along those nature and things like that. So
I think it's called comp het, compulsory heteronormity. hell of a drug
Mm.
to like.
I mean, I would also like the idea of masking, like, you know, putting
Yes.
on this personality to blend in with the rest.
Mhm.
Because I know I've definitely found myself in situations where I'm like, oh, everybody's joking about this, I should make a joke about it too. Ha 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 ha. But like, I don't get it. So
I kind of want to I think this question was really good from earlier. What kind of conversations had you had with your partner, if you had one or have, to create a safe space for that? And I think I struggle with that. I mean, now I put it on all of like my dating profiles, like, hey, if you're looking for sex, you're not gonna get it. Just straight up. If you're looking for a hookup, just not gonna happen. Don't look for it here. Even though I do enjoy the act, like eventually if, but I don't want to set up that expectation because that's dangerous for me. So how has anyone else kind of maneuvered around that, I guess?
I know for me, I don't really have like an extensive dating history because for a really long time, like my first like serious relationships, they were all online and they were like the healthiest and also the longest I've had because like we spent a lot of time like just talking or watching movies and doing other things that we can do, and there wasn't like that sexual component. So we were both like super comfortable, and it never really came up. But in recent years, like I've started dating people that are like in my area, and it was like awkward trying to explain to them, like it's like, I mean, I think you're hot and all that, but I'd much rather just like hold your hand or something like that. And it was just it just kind of like it would always just make it like very tense to be around people, because it's like they are in their head, they're like, oh, you're at my house, we're in you're in my bed, or we're cuddling, so maybe something should happen. I'm like, no, I'm just really engaged with this show right now. Also, I got cats at home I gotta feed, I gotta go. I got kids, I gotta go. So like it's like I've never been able to have like as serious as a conversation that I want with people, but also I just stopped giving a shit. It's like I'm not gonna stress myself out because you want to make it about you. So it's like I'm fine chilling at home.
I think
Yeah.
like I've had good experiences recently, but that's just because my girlfriend found out she's also demi. So off the bat, when we started dating, it was kind of like it's fun, but we don't have to have it anyways. Like that expectation was already there, which made it feel safer for me. And then in some weird way want to do it more because I knew the pressure wasn't there. It's like almost if like they were expecting so then like the more I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like kind of weird that way.
I don't know. I may be the odd one out here, but I'm actually married and in a monogamous relationship. And I don't want to talk too much about that. But what I will say is that it can be really tricky and really hard, especially if you've been sexually active in the past. And I found out I was well into our relationship, into our marriage, and it's something you have to be very careful about because it can be taken personally, especially when they haven't been familiar with it. It sucked because for a long time leading up to me identifying as ace, I didn't have the language or words to use to properly convey that, which definitely caused some struggle. But that, I mean, you hear it in any form of relationship, but like communication, like, and talking about it and talking about what they need and what you need are super important, and both are valid. Like, my partner is allossexual. And we haven't talked about it a ton, but like we've had the conversations of like, what do you need? What do I need? What are your boundaries? What are my boundaries? And also understanding that like both of those are valid, and if it's a point of contention, maybe you need to talk about it. But like if it's a point of contention in your relationship, no matter what your relationship is, like it's still important you have that conversation, because both of your feelings and both of your identities are valid and need to be supported equally.
That is so important. I think also like by also having panels like this, it's giving people who don't know or don't have the language to also be able then to have the words to communicate that with their significant others and or whoever they're with.
I mean, I think I'm different than everybody else as well, because don't I don't date, and I haven't had a significant relationship for a while. Like maybe 2006 was when my last one ended, and I only had two to begin with. And when I say significant relationship, I mean something where it was like there's a connection, and where dating, past dating, I guess I would say, and we're together, and but yeah, so I don't know what it's like to have a partner as an ace person, like as me having decided that I'm going to say this, I'm going to identify myself this way. I have not had any type of partner or any dating experience as ace.
I think it's super interesting that we have this like huge spectrum, even within, this like asexuality umbrella. We have this huge spectrum of like, yes, dating, and also like, no thanks. I think that actually goes pretty well into, actually, no, I want to talk about resources. What did we have growing up if any? For me, it was Tumblr.
I know.
Tumblr.
Yeah.
Tumblr was
Tumblr.
mine.
I think
Right.
for us who are the younger ones of the panel, it was Tumblr, and that was it. That was kind of it, because there's no other like main social media. Like Facebook was still new.
Yeah.
Twitter was news outlets for the most part.
So I'll put it myself, age myself. Facebook was not around when I graduated college. If it was still in the beginning phase and only at Harvard. Like it was something that I went back to visit people, and that's how I heard about it existing. I don't know when Tumblr existed. I never really fell into something like that. My high school had a gay straight alliance that had 3 people in it, and that was the closest that there ever was to any sort of resources that were available. And one of those people was someone who is what people would call a performative ally, and actually not well liked. So that kind of kept me away from just being a part of that. Eventually there was internet, but those were things that were not part of my life experience, where my interest lied, so I wasn't exposed to those things. So
yeah, I had LiveJournal, but that was just for really bad fan fiction. Like we didn't.
Hey,
although
sometimes
I will say
I-
my introduction into fan fiction, and when I was in college, which was like, I'm old enough that there actually, we didn't even have cell phones until I was in college. But that was when I think I realized like the whole like pan part of my identity. It's like, oh wow, okay. And also the asexual part of my identity too was like, I love reading fan fiction, and I love reading romance, and I love watching shows that are just so messy, like the Vampire Diaries and all of that. I just don't want to participate in any of those activities.
Spectator sport.
Yes.
Need my popcorn.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
There's
exactly.
a kink term for it, but
Yeah.
We'll talk about that on
It's
the
fun after
break.
dark. Come on.
yeah.
V
After
V
dark, after
squad,
dark.
V squad.
Yay! Oh, we've got a raid coming in. Very nice.
Oh.
Awesome.
Love Word
Hello.
Fangirl. They're an amazing human being, I would just like to say.
Oh, this one's I got a question coming that seems really interesting. Would you say that being asexual also somewhat shaped your relationship with your own gender?
Maybe
Absolutely.
that's something we
Ooh.
can ruminate on, because I think we were planning a 1
Yeah.
o'clock break. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah.
So do we want to let that one percolate while we all go take breaks and I take care of my screaming cat?
Yeah.
Everyone's
Yeah, I need to make some more
children.
coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say
Oh.
the door is open wide enough for her to get in, but she refuses. So
Baby.
I know.
All right, cool. Then we will take a 10-minute break. 10 minutes? I think it's 10 minutes. Break here, and we will come back and I will collect questions and come up with more stuff to talk about, I guess. All right,
Oh, we could do this all
cool.
day.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
All right.
Yes! Oh my
Oh
gosh!
my
Just
god.
show up cats for the second half. That's all.
Yeah.
The boy.
Welcome back. We are back here with the so you think you might be asexual panel. We looked at the chat during break, and there were some topics that might be a little bit heavy or a little bit touchy. I will want to reiterate, we are not therapists. We're not professionals. A lot of us aren't equipped to handle some things in a safe manner. So I just want to like put that out there as a reminder for people. But they do matter. So I do want to kind of maybe touch on it a little bit without getting too much into it. Being asexual for reasons that are not organic. Being asexual because of events or happenings that have happened to them. That totally valid. You don't you don't need to explain why you're ace. I think as a bottom line, you don't need to explain yourself. If you do, you do. But I mean, I relate. I've had pretty bad things happen to me for a very long time that has informed my ace identity, but it was still like, go to a therapist, please. Everyone should have a therapist. Just everyone should have a therapist. Go to therapy. It's good for
Yeah.
you.
Great.
And kind of detangle some of that, and you can like figure that out a little bit better, I think. But this is not the place to do it. Please take all of our advice with a grain of salt, please. Oh my god.
Yeah, no,
But,
I think it's important to know that none of us are mental health therapists. None of us can tell you, how your experiences have shaped who you are. But I think, how we experience and what we experience in life does have an effect on who we are. I know that I personally have questioned whether my own experiences have shaped my sexuality. I developed at a very young age. I was hypersexualized starting at the age of 10, even by members of my own family. And it made me uncomfortable interacting with other people. But I think realizing that those interactions and that experience changed how I saw myself, but not necessarily how I saw or felt about other people. And again, that's just my own experience, but I think you can't allow one thing to define you. And it's important to remember that, sexuality, there's feelings, but there's also there's physical chemistry, but there's also brain chemistry involved. And so I don't think anyone can really say, well, you're asexual because of this or you're asexual because of that. It's just something that, yeah, you have to explore with yourself and with a mental health expert. So
I also think we mentioned earlier before we got on camera that oh shoot, and then I lost it. Oh, people do bring up traumatic events as ace erasure, that oh, you're ace because this happened,
mm,
not because it's from yourself.
mm.
So that is something also to be careful with and to discuss with a professional to kind of untangle that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I had mentioned that I knew I was ace way before I started taking any of the medications that could possibly be used to say, oh, but that's why you don't have a libido.
For sure,
I've-
for sure.
I've never taken any medications other than the occasional prescription pain pills because I apparently break bones fairly easily. But also like have not, so there hasn't been that. There's, you know, oh, your testosterone is just low. Nope, I've been tested. Normal levels. It's not
Same.
it's not it's not a chemical thing. It's and you know everybody's going to be different, but you can see that there's plenty of examples out there, plenty of people who are out there who are perfectly you know don't have any of those so-called modifiers or anything that will affect that.
For sure. I also, so many tests. I went through so many tests just to I wanted to figure out what was wrong with me. Like,
Mhm.
why was I not, why did I not want these? Like, maybe, okay, so there has to be like some kind of deficiency within, like physical deficiency that I can fix.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Test after test. It's like, hey, you're just missing some iron, or like you need to up your vitamin D. And
Same.
Mhm.
right? And so, or like, oh, your B12 levels are a little low, so maybe take some supplements. But like, all of like, what do you call it, triglycerides or like your hormone levels, like they were, no matter what birth control I was on, because I've been on everything. I've tried everything. Because like, some killed my libido and some like made me cry all the time. But none of that like affected my lack of attraction to people, sexual attraction. Of course, like I like pretty people, but like the none of it affected like sexual attraction. So yeah, difference. Real different. I think Elijah wanted to talk about earlier about like kind of aha moment or a something's up.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so sad I missed like when we were all first talking about it. 'Cause I was like, oh my internet, oh it hates me. Okay. But I would definitely say for me, like I kind of always knew something, something was, I wouldn't say like off, but like I wasn't, the same as like my classmates and stuff like that. Like especially when I was a kid, I had a lot of like guy friends and stuff like that. They'd take their shirts off to play football and I'd be like, yeah, it's just a body, yeah. And like my parents would like yell at me about it, or like whenever we would go to like museums, especially if they had like naked statues and stuff like that. Like a lot of people would be like, oh my god, it's a boob, and I'm like that's some pretty cool art.
Yeah.
Nice. And then it like slowly got to the point where whenever I'd have like friends and stuff like that talk about like like if they had like an interaction or like porn and stuff like that, I'd be like, I don't get it, but I'll listen to you. Sort of thing. And
It's
then
kind of
like
like, yeah, like someone's like into a sport and you're like,
yeah,
I don't
I'm
even know
like
the rules to this, but
I'm like, go off.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go off.
yeah.
Excited for it, so
Yeah.
I'm excited
Yeah.
for
Yes,
you.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, like I'm happy that you're happy. Yeah, and then like I would definitely say like it got to a point where like I was like, not a lot of people feel like this because I can't contribute to these conversations because it's like, I don't fully get it. I'm not like excited to talk about this, like I'd much rather like if I do happen to see like porn or anything like that, I'm like, wow. Wow, I guess. I don't know.
I think
Or
for
like,
me,
yeah.
like, okay, this is a
Oh,
little bit
sorry.
like after.
Go ahead.
No, you're good.
Go ahead.
This is a little bit like after dark, but like, I'm not into 3D sometimes, but like, 3D is just in live action. I'm just like, it looks messy. And then I
Just
think
the
about like unions.
fingernails.
Yeah, fingernails,
fingernails.
infections, protection. Do they test? Unions, are they being paid? Like, is it ethical? Like,
Are
and
you
it just-
having a good time? It's the real question. Are you okay?
How is that position comfortable?
I know you're
Couldn't you spend a
tired.
Stretch
little more
before?
money on the budget on the background? Like,
Yeah, like is that lighting's not good enough. Like, come on, we need to
Mm-mm,
see like
mm-mm.
Or it's
I don't
like
want to
it's
see
like,
that.
It's like, wow, this house is really nice.
Set design, yeah.
Wow.
How much is that furniture?
Is
I
that
know.
whole wall just a mirror? Wow. Yeah, like I would definitely say for me, especially because I do like a lot of art as well. When I see like people in everyday too, I'm like, wow, they're like, like really hot, you know, if you're shirtless, that's cool. But I'm more so like looking at you at like, okay, the bone is right here, the muscles right here. This is how like things are positioned. This is how things work and stuff like that. So it's like very like analytical if I'm looking at a person. But I can appreciate the human body, but it's just like, it's a body.
Mm. I
Uh,
appreciate the human body over there.
yeah. Yeah.
Not-
Yeah, and like in recent years, I've become like the designated like I guess like story holder. Like pretty much all my friends I have now, they're like very very sex positive, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I saw a guy like last week, and we did X, Y, and Z," and I'm like, "Get your tits out." Yeah, I don't know.
Let's go.
I'll be your personal cheerleader. Go off, queen.
But that's actually like I feel like that's almost across the board just with other ace people that I've met. It's like we're such wing people and cheerleaders.
Oh yeah.
It's like, no, go get it. We will be in your corner. I will help you.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
I'm gonna
Mhm.
go.
Like
all
you
three
need
of us.
materials, you need
Yeah.
snacks, you need
Yeah.
water.
What's going on? I can
Right,
give you
right.
Call
resources. I
me
can tell you.
anytime if something goes wrong. I'm good, but
Yeah, like I always joke about like if 'cause a lot of my friends are also like, I should start an OnlyFans. And I'm like, if you want to, I'll like support you. I won't watch it though. I'll just give you my money so I can make sure you eat.
yeah.
So it's like,
I mean, like, I think about it and I'm like, hey, I'm like conventionally attractive. I could make some side hustle, but then it's also like I don't want people to perceive me in that way. So it's just like that weird thing of like,
definitely.
yes, I'm gorgeous and I want people to know that, but also I don't want people to think they're sexually attracted to me. Like that's gross. So it's
Okay. So I feel like that might be a good segue because there's a question about how does your asexuality affect your gender? And like I know for me, like, I was, AFAB, I identify as female, and I love dressing up. I love putting on makeup. I love putting on nice clothes. But like that's for me, that's not for other people. And it can be tricky sometimes because, you get those comments like, well, you're leading us on, like you're dressing provocatively.
I got that so much growing up because I'm non-binary. I don't really identify as a woman. Never. I just it's over there, not me. But like I'm so femme. I'm so high femme. Like, look at me. I got a dress on. I got like so much makeup on. This is what I wear every day. And like I love like, what people would call like a very sexy aesthetic. Like at any time I'm out with like garters on and like thigh highs, like I'm like showing skin, hell yeah. But people will tell me you're leading them on. You want something out of them, or like why would people stop because look at you? And I'm just like, but I like looking this way because I think I look good doing it, but I don't
Mhm.
want to. I don't want that,
Mhm.
you know. So,
It's not for them, it's for you. It's what you
Mhm.
said.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
yeah.
I don't want to wear
Yeah.
clothes. That has nothing to do with
I know.
anything like to be sexual. I recently moved from Phoenix where I had to have my phone in Celsius because 40 degrees just seems so much more reasonable than 113. And I had and I had a skirt that I would wear around the house because it was a lot cooler. There was a nice breeze.
Mm.
It was shorter than any shorts that I could find in a man's cut. It has nothing to do with you know any sexual desires.
Mm.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know. I was born there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for all of you.
You had to like air condition your car for the first 5 minutes just so you don't burn yourself getting in.
That's insane.
That's
Ugh.
pretty.
And I
Yeah.
didn't even like grow up there. I only was there for like the first 3 years of my life. These are stuff that my parents told me that like, yeah, as an infant, we had to like air condition the car before we put you in this car seat so you don't burn you. I'm like,
Nope.
what is this?
I legit bake cookies at work by just leaving them in the car on a metal sheet.
Oh.
If especially if you work at an office that doesn't have covered parking.
Insane.
Brutal.
God.
But hey, clothing doesn't
Yeah.
define.
Right.
Yeah. Like I would definitely say for me, like I like always kind of dressed like pretty androgynous. Like my idols growing up was like Prince and like Andre 3000. Basically like just anybody that was like they didn't they didn't care. Like I like wearing this, I'm gonna wear it because I think I look good in this. So like it's definitely been that for me. It's and like I have had people like kind of like insult me, be like, oh, you look like somebody's grandpa and stuff like that. And I'm like, I mean,
Grandpa
I
core is legit.
yeah, I went to a poetry night and I wore like this oversized like cowboy shirt because I love cowboy shirts. And like everybody there was like, you're dressed like a grandpa, but like a sexy grandpa. And I was like, I'll take it. I'll take it. Thanks.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would
I like. Mhm. Go on.
oh,
Finish.
I was gonna say, yeah, like, and then I recently moved into my own place, into definitely a much safer place, and I've like started dressing more goth and like how I really want to dress, and the reason I really like that fashion and like that scene, I mean, I'm sad all the time anyway, so might as well.
Dress the part.
But yeah, but also that culture in general, like you see everybody on the whole spectrum of gender, sexuality, and they just
Mhm.
dress however you want. And like you can go into those environments and be comfortable without somebody like saying, like, oh, you're wearing, like this guy's wearing a skirt or a dress. So I'm gonna like attack them or like make weird comments towards you. So it's like that for me, that's why I really like that stuff.
I like the phrase I heard once. I don't identify as a gender. I identify as a threat. I'm like,
Oh.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like that. I like that. I'm gonna take that.
Mm.
So it's like, I don't care. Like, I identify as whatever I want as long as you find me hot. We're good.
I
But
think it's really
also,
hard when. Oh,
Mm.
sorry. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
no, but it's like I'm hot, but also like don't be sexually attracted to me, please.
Right. I think it's really hard because society like couples together all these different parts of an identity that don't necessarily have to be related to each other. Like gender doesn't have to be related to the type of fashion that you wear, and it doesn't have to be related to the sexuality that you identify with, but it is very like, if you're this, then if this is your gender, then this is your sexuality, and then this is how you're supposed to express yourself in what you wear, and it doesn't need to be like that. But yeah, my own gender is more like I call myself this because it's what I'm coded as, it's what I'm perceived as, and it's how I'm treated. Right. So like I don't have, again, there's like a through line of emotional disconnection sometimes with a lot of stuff. In fact, the only thing about my identity that I really do claim is asexuality and demi-romanticism. Like there's a lot of other things I'm like, well, you can call me a woman if you want, you call me a man, I don't care, whatever, right? Like everybody's going to perceive me as a woman, but in my head, I don't necessarily have any more emotional connection to woman than man or something that's not either.
And I mean, I think it's important to touch on that. I mean, I think we're all located in North America, and that so much of the modern discussion about sex and sexuality and gender is unfortunately seen through the Western white heteronormative lens.
Yep.
You know, if we were to take that away, and if we look at traditional cultures, Western, Eastern cultures, there's different language out there. You know, even just thinking about you know, indigenous peoples of North America and the idea of being two-spirited, like that existed in North America long before we ever got here. And I mean, we do have to talk about like the erasure of those cultures and identities that have unfortunately come along. And I think it's important not to ignore that.
For sure. For me, like the first thing that I thought of was that I'm a little bit more on top of people for my pronouns if they're like grew up in the Western country. But for those overseas, like a lot of like my mainland Chinese coworkers, I'm Taiwanese by the way, but like anyone from like on that side of the coast, I just let it slide because pronouns don't exist. He, she, they, like it's all one pronoun for everyone. So
Yeah.
like they mix it up for, you know, cis people too. So I'm like, you know what? It's fine. Just use whatever you want.
All
Yeah.
comes back to language again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a polyglot actually, so I love learning, and I like pick up, like when I hear languages, I don't necessarily think, oh, that's strange, that's like gibberish or gobbledygook. I'm like, oh, if I learned this language, I could understand what they were saying. And then I'm like, okay, Duolingo, you know.
Let's go. Let's go.
So, yeah, that was one of the things that I really liked about learning Korean. I was like, wait a minute, you don't really need like gendered pronouns? What? And also they don't have verb conjugation, which is amazing.
Listen, I'm a
That
French
was my
teacher. You
biggest
don't have to tell
trouble.
me about.
It was the worst learning English is my second language, but like, you know, it's my best one now because I live here. But like, oh my God, I was an ESL for like the first 3 years of my schooling in like kindergarten. And like just I wrote like someone from overseas because like I didn't know past, present, future tense. I didn't do subject verb agreement. Like that doesn't exist. You put a verb and the subject and when you did it.
So I'm a French teacher. I speak French. And one thing I think that's coming up more and more these days is the issue of Romance languages being intrinsically gendered.
Yeah.
You know, you've got the masculine and the feminine, and there's nothing in between. And so like for a lot of queer people who live in France and Spain and all of these countries, I read this fascinating article once about how a lot of queer folks in France prefer to do therapy in English because English doesn't limit their gender expression the way these languages do. Because in Spanish, in French, you have to choose, I'm going to use the masculine or I'm going to use the feminine, whereas in English, that doesn't exist. In a lot of other languages, that doesn't exist. And unfortunately, like, we all know how long I hope it takes language to evolve. And you know, even, you know, we've been talking about today trying to find the terms to express ourselves, and you know, those languages are so much more limited. So
Yeah,
language
I
is
know that-
tricky.
Yeah.
Bring
But
back Esperanto.
But it's also like it should also be more fluid, I think, than it is. You know, like when people talk about slang, right? Like the reason why those words exist, why they come up, is because that is how that generation or that group of people talk to each other and communicate with each other and create words that are important to them.
it also just like kind of bringing it back to the original thing too, is that it also goes to show that like no matter like how you identify or figure out yourself or what words you want, like there is that community out there. It might always be, it might not necessarily be present in your immediate community, in your immediate neighborhood. It might be bigger than that. It might be out there in the world. But the fact of the matter is, like, even if, you know, I forget what the actual statistical numbers are and I don't want to misquote, but even if it's a small percentage of the world population that is outwardly identifying as ace is out there, that's still a lot of people. And as you can see just from our panel and the rest of the panels, like there is a whole bunch of discrepancy, like welcome discrepancy within that. And so like that's the thing about, I also like finding the words that you want to describe yourself as, like it's out there. And there are more and more resources, and I think we've all touched on the fact that like as soon as you start like just sort of looking into it, like you might discover other words that are not Western white heteronormative, you know, words that fit you better. And I think we've used it.
And I mean, even within like the queer community, like I remember when there was the big fight about like, well, what does the Q and LGBTQ stand for?
And
You
the
know?
A. I
And the
hated that.
A.
What does the A stand for?
Oh.
It's the A stand for it.
And
Yeah.
also, you know, you go to Pride and they're like LGBT, sometimes Q, and then there's never the IA at the end. And I'm like, all right.
That's
I'll
why
take
I
it,
like to
guess.
use the term quilt bag, because it's easier to say for me, but it includes everything: queer, unsure,
Yeah.
intersex. You know,
Or
it's
the question I hear my students ask, what are your letters?
That's amazing.
But I like
Yeah.
The
that,
kids are
actually.
okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I really like that.
Well,
Yeah.
Possibly,
I've also had some students. So
yeah.
yeah. Mm.
They're
But for the
mostly
most
okay.
part.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to touch back on agosexual, because that's a new term for me now that we're talking about language. What does that mean?
Well, Zach said it first. I mean, I think we both
Yeah.
said that. I think we both said we identify as that, but Zach said it first, so I'll let you go.
all right. So yeah, I could still identify things that people that I find attractive and experience sexual arousal from. I just don't want to do anything with them. And it's not so much as the same as, you know, the idea of not having a sexual attraction. It's not having any desire to act on it. And you know, Jared mentioned, you know, that made an analogy earlier about working out or going to the gym type of thing. And yeah, I have absolutely no desire to go to the gym in this, using this metaphor. It doesn't mean that you don't have sexual thoughts, but there's no compulsion to act. There's no.
You think about going to the gym, but you don't go.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I think about being buff and just not working out.
Too much
I
work.
think,
Yeah. The sweatiness.
Once again, too many fluids.
yeah, it's just too many, all those fluids. I think
All those fluids.
Given the option right now, I would rather go and get on my elliptical machine for 30 minutes than have sex for 30 minutes.
Oh.
Oh,
Fighting words.
It's not. That's it's you know, and it was brought up on the, you know, there's a scale there, and my scale is indifferent to repulsed.
Mhm. Yeah, I think I would say that the way I perceive my ego sexuality is I don't mind being a what's the right word that I want to use? I don't mind reading or watching or any of those sorts of things. And I will go to the gym. I just don't want to work out. So it's more than just I don't want to act on it. It is I don't want to participate.
Mm.
I'll
Um,
watch people work out.
Oh yeah. I
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
reading about people
I mean,
working
it's
out.
yeah, all that stuff is awesome. I mean,
So
there's so
good.
many there
Getting
are
road work.
so many like Korean dramas that I watch when like two people are like sitting this close to each other, and I'm like, now kiss, now bang.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
I'm
amount of-
rooting for you. I want that to happen.
The amount of times
Because
I've yelled
I
make
can just-
out at my
right.
TV screen, like,
Yeah,
oh yeah.
yeah, exactly. I don't want to participate in it,
No.
but it's okay that you're doing it.
I think I want to actually on that. There's a nuance I do want to maybe touch upon. It is very personal though. Like, there's a difference between wanting to work out with other people, but
And
sometimes you just want to do it yourself.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like so
you
it
buy
like a
that
lot of the time it's
elliptical.
better.
Yeah.
You buy that elliptical for
Hit
your
the home
own
gym.
house, but you don't want to go to LA Fitness
Yeah.
and
It's true.
use an elliptical with someone else.
It's a very pragmatic, it's a very pragmatic approach.
Mm.
I mean, it is sort of a. I mean, I can speak for myself in the sense that it's just like it is one of those things where it's like, you know, when you don't want to again go to the gym, but you're still thinking about just not with like any particular person or anything like that, but you still are aware of the notion of working out or want to be buff. If we're using this analogy, and just,
Yeah.
Keep
I
going
don't
with
know how
this.
clean we need to be for YouTube. That's
Yeah.
why I'm using. Otherwise, I just use the terms.
I
would
think
just
we're
use
doing
it,
a
but-
pretty good job.
Yeah.
I mean, I got rid of my home elliptical.
Okay.
And I'm okay with that. Like that's
Great.
just you know, I never want to go to the gym no matter where it is. So
All right.
And that's
I
that's the cool thing. That's just as
Yeah.
case as any other
Yes,
response.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like
I
awesome, dope.
I think I'm on the opposite side of the spectrum. It's like, yeah, I got a full gym at home. Like whatever you need, I have it.
I would definitely say for me, I was like, I don't really want to go to the gym at all. I'm just kind of even at home, I'm just kind of chilling. But then like after I started T, it's like,
I've heard that. I've
and
heard that.
I kind of don't like it because it'll be like at really inconvenient times when I'm at work and I'm like, yo, I'm not trying to think about this right now. I'm trying to do paperwork.
It is absolutely an inconvenience. Absolutely.
I'm like,
Yeah,
Jesus Christ.
The number of people I've seen like on dating apps, like I just got on testosterone, and oh my god, and I'm like, I'm happy for you, but oh my
Yes.
god.
It's like I just wanted the facial hair and the deep voice, not this.
Nothing else.
Nothing else. Take me back. I'm kidding. Don't.
Sure.
No.
But yeah, and I do like own equipment, but it's literally just decoration. I'm just like, that's a
Great
really
display
cool
case.
sculpt. That's really cool coloring. In the drawer it goes.
Honestly, I've seen some of like I have some friends who actually just have them in display cases.
Some of them are
just-
pretty cool.
Yeah, they are. And it's just like, wow, technology has advanced.
It's like
So
looking
much.
at my display case right here, trying to picture that. And I'm like, ooh.
I mean, hey, you buy a thing that's $300. Show it off.
I mean,
Talk about my dice like that. Oh my god.
right.
Me too. My dice, so
Oh,
much money
no.
on dice.
The dream.
That's a whole other convention.
Mhm.
Oh my goodness.
I know. Oh boy.
I love the
Yes.
spectrum we have here, though.
Yeah.
Like,
Mm.
we have some that's just like, none of it. And I'm just like, all of it.
Send it your
Yeah,
way.
like I would definitely say like most of like the artists I follow on Twitter are their
Me too.
AD accounts.
Yeah.
Most of the stuff I subscribe to on Patreon are all AD accounts. And like even
Mhm.
some of like the prints I own that like hang up in my room, I'm like, nobody's allowed in my room. But it's like I don't know, I just appreciate the art. I'm just like, they look like they're
I
having a
love looking
great
at it.
time.
Yeah.
It's not for me, but get that shit, I guess. I don't know.
Or I think a lot of it is just appreciation of just like, just human body and what it's capable of.
Yeah, because
And like,
oh, go ahead, sorry.
no, it's just like purely like art.
Mhm.
And like it looks good to me.
Yeah, because I know for me also it's in recent years I do like that I have been able to see, more people that look like me or people of different body types and stuff like that that wasn't as prevalent back in the day when it was like skinny white people. It's like there's literally people, there's like a whole spectrum of body types and just people in general. So that's why I really like the people that I follow, because they're like, oh yeah, no, they're all having a good time, but they all look different. So that's why I really appreciate it.
It's like filling the gap that we didn't have before
Yeah.
of like seeing a lot of representation. I was just like, yes, I want it plastered.
Yes.
Mhm.
So fun. I'm having such a good time with you guys.
I know we keep doing this all day.
And
Well, you had that book that you had mentioned at the
Oh,
beginning.
Yeah. Because
Yes.
actually, this sort of ties into another thing that I did want to mention. So this book here, I think you can see
Yep.
it. Okay. Refusing compulsory sexuality, a Black asexual lens on our sex obsessed culture. I actually haven't finished reading all the way through it. I was like, I'm just gonna look and like read like the first couple pages, and then like 30 pages later, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I like this book. But yeah, it really takes a look at some of the ingrained stuff, which a lot of it kind of goes back to the white default on how sexuality and gender is perceived and sort of propagates itself in society. You know, one of the things I was saying about my gender, I don't necessarily feel as connected to being called a woman, although that's what I call myself. But it's mostly because that is what I'm going to be perceived as, right? I'm going to be perceived as a Black woman, as an Indigenous woman. And so if it doesn't bother me to be called that, then I'll be called that. Some people really, really don't want to be called a woman when they're not. And that's absolutely valid, right? Like it's totally valid, but I don't care either way. Um, but a lot of these things that get ingrained in our society is all through perception, instead of saying that everyone perceives things differently and everybody can have something different. You can have 5 really femme high maintenance women sitting in front of you and none of them call themselves women, and that's okay, right? you know um but yeah, so that book is really interesting. And one of the things that I had wanted to segue from that, because honestly, when I was growing up, I didn't know that Black people were allowed to be asexual, right? Like I just didn't know any Black asexuals. I didn't know, it was even hard to like know Black people who were out of the closet, like even just saying that they're queer, you know. um so then finding, it was actually really hard for me to start using the language of me being asexual, me being queer, because even when there's, gay people on TV, there's queer people here, you have alliances and you have pride and all that. There was never any significant amount of people who looked like me. So I didn't feel like I was part of that community at all.
Very much
So
the
like
same, yeah.
using the word, well, if I'm not part of the community, how can I use the word? Right.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah,
Yeah, I
like
get. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, it's okay.
Um, but yeah, I just also wanted to piggyback off of what you were saying, because I definitely relate. Yeah, like for me, I never knew anybody that used ace or asexual at all. And my understanding of it as a kid, I was like, oh, I'm just celibate, like a priest. I don't know, like, and that's how I would explain to people. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just celibate. And then like, funny enough, like after I got access to the internet and finding Tumblr, and people like having like whole blogs about just the different types of sexuality and stuff like that, I was like, asexual, huh? That's how I feel. Yeah, that's great. And then like you were saying with like pride, like thankfully where I live, because I'm in Atlanta, this is like queer capital besides San Francisco. But thankfully down here, the pride that we do have two, one for Black Pride specifically, and then just pride in general. So I have been able to, like, when I do go, like, I do see other people that look like me, but there's still not that representation of people on the asexual spectrum. So it's weird, because it's like, it's comforting to be here because I can have this conversation, but it's still like, I still kind of feel like an outcast a little bit. So it's like, yeah.
I wasn't able to go to Pride at all growing up because it was a very like you think, because San Francisco's there, like you'd think the Silicon Valley would be it's not. It's so conservative. Silicon Valley is so conservative. I think a ton of us came out after high school because we couldn't figure it out before then, or it was dangerous to do it before then. But I came out here, New York City. I went to Pride.
Like,
Nobody looked like me, right? Like no, like it was corporations, there's a lot of police, it's just a bunch of people with like the rainbow flag and not much else. At least when I first came here like a decade ago, it's a little better now. Like the trans flag is popping out, so that's exciting. But like, I see the ace flag once. And then I usually have it like painted on my cheek, like when I go, nobody knows what it is. So it's like
no.
you go and you're like, yeah, like people kind of like me, but then nobody knows who you are. So yeah, it's just and also like I think it's really interesting, like from like a young age, like being perceived as an Asian woman, like you get weirdly like sexualized, but also you're not supposed to like it, or you're supposed to be submissive about it, or it's like a weird bunch of like contradictions on it, because there's like the scary dragon lady, and then there's like the like obedient housewife. And then I'm like, have you seen like an Asian mother? They are the scariest motherfuckers. Sorry.
We
There's
almost
the one.
Bleep it out.
Bleep
that out.
right? We get one.
In a PG-13 movie, you're allowed one. There
You're
it is.
allowed one.
All right. My bad.
There it is.
what a placement.
But it's like, have you seen Asian women? Like, so it was just like the weirdest like perceptions people have. You don't know what you're gonna get when you meet someone. And also because like I grew up in a mostly Asian community from the Bay Area. Coming out here, I found out what yellow fever was.
Oh
Oh,
no.
yeah.
That was
Yeah.
pretty gross.
Yeah.
So you get that, and then you're also like asexual, and you're like,
Mhm.
Just
Yeah.
lots of "Ee,"
Just
all the
ickiness
time.
just everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as a black woman, like black women are highly sexualized from childhood, right? Like that is a child. Why are you sexualizing a child? And I started menstruating when I was 9, and I was wearing a B cup bra by the time I was like 10 or 11. So it has always been part of of how I am treated and perceived. And it is it's really exhausting because like me, like you said, like you get sexualized, but then you're not supposed to like act on it. You're not supposed to
Yeah.
like want to or do it. Like you get called fast if you actually, and it doesn't even have to be that you're doing anything. It's just like, oh, you're seen out with a bunch of boys or something like that. Oh, she's fast, right? But you also like told it's just it's so confusing, and it's really hard to work through that. And then a lot of men see um POC bodies, but Black women bodies in particular, as like commodities, as like things that you own, and whether there's consent or not, like they're supposed to want to have sex.
Yeah, I know for me, like when I was a kid, I was very much a late bloomer. So I like even when I was like 12, 13, I still looked super young. And it's so gross because I got harassed and all that by older men when I was a kid versus now where nobody really talks to me that often unless they're like another queer person or somebody of my age, which I'm like, I'm grateful because I really don't want that, but it's just this confusing thing of like, what? Why are you talking to me? I'm 9, dude. Shut up. And
Yeah.
now I'm just like, I mean, you can talk to me. I'll just kind of like stare at you if you want. I don't know. So
Yeah,
definitely.
I still get like lots of men. Just it's like how dare you? But I also, again, I get perceived as like easy or like overly flirty or a bunch of other more like derogatory racy terms because like I hang out with like 90% of my friends are mask. And growing up, all my friends were boys. I really didn't have any friends that were girls, women. Even now, it's like kind of awkward for me. And like it didn't really until like much later. I'm like, oh, it's because I'm not. But then I was like the singular girl, like with a bunch of boys, just like getting really messy in the dirt. But it's just that really weird perception because I love being femme, but then like all my friends are men. Mm. Like, so that's like the perceived notion that people have.
Yeah, like there's this one YouTuber I watch named T Nor. And she has some really good videos about how like POC women, specifically like Black girls, are even from birth, they're like people immediately like perceive them as adults. So they're kind of forced into this space of like, I have to act like a grown up even though I'm 7, like, or like, I'm just trying to enjoy my childhood, but the way society is set up is that like we're kind of forced into this adult space when we shouldn't be there at all, and we should be able to enjoy you know our own childhood and our own experiences without having to worry about, oh, I wore shorts because it's summertime and you're immediately like sexualizing me.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's just a weird space. Hopefully we get better
So
in the
messy.
future. We're getting there, but it's not happening fast enough.
Yeah. Um, let's see. Is there anything else? Uh, I think we covered a lot. Is there anything else that anybody else wanted to contribute that we maybe missed earlier today or want to expand more on top of?
Not really. I think we. I'm
Well,
pretty
I hope we
satisfied
cracked
with
some
what we all
eggs
talked
today.
about.
I know.
Hope we cracked some eggs today on asexuality. If people are not familiar with that term, it's one that trans people use a lot, meaning that when you crack someone's egg, someone realizes, has that aha moment of, oh, I might identify differently. So that's the term, cracking an egg. So yeah, do we want to go around again with our socials and who we are and what we do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. I'll start. I'm me. I use they them pronouns. I am on Twitter most of the time. I do some cosplay, I do some sewing, I do a lot of D&D. So I do a lot of like tabletop RPGs, and I'm starting to write a little bit. And I just do a lot of different things, including being here. It's been great being here. Zach?
Hi, I'm Zachary Naldra, he, him. I can be found at Zach Rules on the Bird app and various other social media sites, except for TikTok, where Zach Ruiz beat me there. So I'm Zach Rules Dice. You can also find my website, Zach Rules, where it has links to my community content and freelance TTRPG writing and various actual plays that I have been in. I've got 2 new actual plays that are coming up in late March over on McStabber Studios. One is going to be a Scion game that I am running, and another is going to be a Vampire of the Dark Ages game.
All right, Elijah?
Once again, I'm Elijah. I go by oh my god. Yeah, hey, nay, I don't
Hey.
know. Yeehaw. They he.
It's lunchtime.
It
Mm,
is. It
yeah.
is. I can feel my blood sugar dropping. But you can find me at the Sun Name Set on Twitter. It is SON instead of SUN. I do art, weird stuff. I'm more active on Discord, honestly. Twitter gives me a headache. But yeah, you can follow me there if you want to see weird art.
Great. Jared?
Yeah, I'm Jared, he, him pronouns. You can find me mostly on Twitter, Irish Wolf with an E at the end, 13. And on Discord, same handle. I'm a huge TTRPG nerd. So I'm just starting to break into like digital online. So definitely looking for APs and hopefully getting into publishing some stuff later this year. But mostly just here to have a good time and make some friends, talk about cool stuff. Yeah, that's really it.
Sounds everyone has such exciting things going on. Liz?
My name is Liz. I use she, her pronouns. You can find me on Twitter at at Liz Favtastic. I am a community moderator for Take This, which is a mental health nonprofit. And I co-host Take This Plays on Twitch. Tomorrow night we are actually playing Validate in honor of Black History Month. It's going to be very interesting because it's saucy and we're a
It's
family
such a
friendly
good game.
channel.
Yeah, it's
But
awesome.
I may be hitting y'all up for tips on how to avoid the not safe for work content. So
Oh, don't ask me that because that's what I did.
okay.
You have to look up a guide. I'm sorry.
Yeah. But yeah, so you should come check us out. They're a great organization. So
Last but not least, Lily?
Hi, I am Lily. I'm Elise on Life on Twitter and Spoutable. And I'm also Lily PHL on IG, where I have all my creative stuff. I crochet and I make beaded earrings. I also have a shop at Saxahuanash square.site. I can put that in the chat because it is hard to spell. I'm a guest regular on the Misfits of Space podcast. I was a regular in their Star Wars AP, which was season 1. And I'm a guest on their Monster Hearts 2 AP, where my character is specifically Ace. Yeah. And then I also co-host my own podcast that's called Blurred on the Street, and we are three Black femme people who are talking about geeky and nerdy stuff and current events.
So exciting, so exciting. I want to thank the host of our stream for putting all of this together, having the space for us to do this, having the honor of, moderating. Like, oh my gosh, such an honor today. But I just want to thank everyone here to, be so supportive. I'm just so overwhelmed with so much joy, and I hope everyone has a lovely day and a good rest of the week. Do people think Sunday's the end or the beginning? I don't know. And
That's
yeah,
a cultural
I hope,
debate we can have.
Yes,
yeah, to me they're the end, but whatever. But I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day. And we'll see you guys some other time.
Yes. So next up in AceCon, 4 p.m. Pacific, is being a Latin and asexual. And according to the notes, we are going raiding.
Let's go.
We're gonna go
Yes.
raid Dimples and Dice. So
Let's go.
Awesome. And
Woo.
thanks
Thank
to
you so much for
Jordan for
joining.
moderating, and
yes,
for
Jordan.
for Robo
and
behind the scenes in the production.
Yes. For everyone
thank
behind
you
the scenes.
so much.
These are going.